The truth is, a lot of things has been lied about. And you know the annoying part is that more lies is now coming out. Have you noticed that right now there are some certain things that you're going to be researching about Black Americans, but you are not going to see exactly what you have been seeing before? Probably you're not an history person or you don't do so much research, but for someone like me that every single day I look up for one thing or the other, researching on one thing or the other, I have literally noticed that the media has shut down a lot of things. And most of these things are pure truths. You know, I've been saying it in most of my videos. I said it that you see, especially we Africans, the white man lied to us. They did not only lie, they stripped off every single thing that will make us understand that they lied. I grew up as a child that literally the mother would say, I want you to be as wise as the white man. Why can't you invent? Why can't you think like the white man? In fact, whenever our parents growing up hear anything abroad, they assume that every single person that is there is white. But reality is beginning to unfold itself. No matter how you lie for years, days, decades, we soon bounce back to the real truth. But anyways, welcome back to the channel. I want you guys to honestly watch this video and let me know if what this white professor is saying is true or is false. He said a lot of things. In fact, if you think this will actually waste your time, press on your times too, because I want you to listen bit by bit so that you can really understand. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sonia. Subscribe, like, comment, and share, please. Credit belongs to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. And guys, I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you supporting, liking, dropping commentaries. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. And yes, with that being said, let's dive right into this video. I'll be back with commentaries. Let's go watch, guys.
Why do you have these institutions that the religion, philosophy, politics, all of these systems are institutions which are being financed, organized, and directed by the people who mean to put you into bonds and chains. God has created all of the animals to be free. He created everything. God who has created all things. Freedom is the one thing that you see everywhere, except for man. And consequently, the real freedom in man is up here. Consequently, the old Hiram Mann, one of the first governors of the state of California, Hiram Mann said, just kind of keep paying people off and hoping everything will come out all right tomorrow. And little by little by little, what goes around comes around, and we are facing a terrible time of judgment, I believe, by the divine forces in the universe, which men have called God. I don't know what God is, but I know what He isn't. One of my teachers once said, you can't make God do anything He doesn't want to, and if He's going to do something, you can't stop Him. So consequently, since you can't influence it one way or the other, you should get in tune with the divine force of the universe and go with the flow. And that's what I believe, and that's what I've been trying to do all of my life. Just go with the flow and find out where the facts lead you. Because the more you begin to investigate what we think we understand, where we came from, what we think we're doing, the more you begin to see we've been lied to. We've been lied to by every institution. What makes you think for 1 minute that the religious institution is the only one that's never been touched? You can bet your bottom educational institutions, colleges. Where do we get the word college? College comes from the collegia, the Latin Roman college of cardinals. I could go on for hours just giving you examples. When you graduate, you come out with a square mortar board, a black square mortar board. What's all that about? black square mortarboards. It has to do with the planet Saturn. Saturn, we're told that in the Old Testament that the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, were worshipers of one God. That's never been true, not true now, and never will be true. That's just one more story that's been given to us. It's never been true. The Hebrew people were worshipers of many gods, many different divine beings. They were the most eclectic theology on the face of the earth. Next to modern day Christianity is Judaism. Eclectic meaning it has collected from all over the world concepts and ideas and put it together and called it today Judaism. Judaism today is the most eclectic religion on the face of the earth. Virtually nothing of what it teaches is true. Virtually nothing of its supposedly background is true. The truth is that the people who are in power, who put this system together, have been in power for thousands of years. This has been going on from day one. I have the highest of respect for the Bible. Anyone who knows me knows I read it and study it all the time. But I'm also well aware that there are encoded messages. The rabbis will tell you that in the Old Testament is filled with encoded messages. And I believe that Christianity is probably the most powerful encoded message the world's ever had. It's one of the oldest messages in the world, and I believe that the Christian teachings in the original scriptural understanding is the most important, volatile story the world's ever known. And it's sitting right in front of you, and most people don't even see it. It is an encoded story. And unfortunately, too many people who are ill-informed, unread, and who have not spent 42 years looking at theology accept what they read in the New Testament and in the Old Testament as actual history, when in point of fact, it is not actual history. There is a message behind the message. And consequently, if you're reading the Bible, and if you're looking at theological subjects from the Bible point of view, in a materialistic way, you're never going to see the obvious story sitting right in front of you. I believe that the story in the New Testament, and I'm concerned about this because I believe the world is now facing another dark age. I think that we are now preparing ourselves to go into a very dark time that's coming on the earth. And I believe that the message that's in the New Testament is a very powerful, symbolic, metaphysical story that is not very well understood today. Let me go back to the original Hebrew religion. Because it forms the basis for Christianity, we need to look at where did any of these things come from. I'm famous for doing that. I couldn't care less who I offend. I want to know the truth. And all you got to do is go to any good library and just start reading. There are hundreds of great reference books out there that tell you where things have come from. First of all of the things which are going on in this world today, from 9/11, all of the wars in the Middle East, all of the incredible bloodshed that's being spilled all over the earth, can be traced back to, and you might want to remember what I'm saying here, because I'm sure you're not going to make the connection when I first tell you, but I'm going to try to explain it to you. The things which are happening today, the people who are in power in this country, the great generals from around the world who are planning wars and violence and bloodshed, all of this stuff can be traced back to the planet Saturn. Saturn is a very, very pivotal, important concept in theology and religion. And most people have never been told any of this and have no knowledge of it at all. But the planet Saturn is very important in world affairs, in theology. In the Islamic belief, the holy city of Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia, Mecca has a Masonic circle, and within the Masonic circle is a square, because you got to do everything on the square, remember. You have a town square, you have New York Square, you have Vatican Square, you have Red Square, you have all kinds of squares. Why? Because this is Masonic. And it goes all the way back into the ancient world, the terms and symbols. Again, the planet Saturn is called the Black Square. It's called the Dark Sun, the Black Sun. This is what the Nazis and the SS and the Gestapo wore black. That's why priests wear black. That's why judges wear black robes. Why do you think a judge wears a black robe? He wears a black robe because when you used to graduate from university, you wear a black robe. Why black robes? Darth Vader wears a black robe. What the hell does a black robe have to do with anything? The judges wear black robes. You know, Supreme Court judges wear black robes. Black robes represent the priesthood of the planet Saturn, the Saturnalian brotherhood. All you need to do is study Nazism, and you will begin to see that the powers behind the Nazi Party, the Thule Society, the Germanian Order, were all members of something called the Saturnalian brotherhood, the brotherhood of Saturn. Saturn was the god of darkness, chaos, and destruction. He teaches you a lesson. He will take your life if you don't listen to him. So consequently, Saturn was very, very important in the ancient world. Thank you. Saturn's name, incidentally, in the old Phoenician ancient Canaanite religion, in the Middle East, the old Phoenician Canaanite worship of the planet Saturn was the most important god of all the ancient world, was the planet Saturn, and his symbol, long before the Hebrews were ever in Cana, the symbol in Cana for the planet Saturn was a six-pointed star. Today we call that star the Star of David. There was no Star of David. It's the Star of Saturn. All of the Jewish reference books, all the Encyclopedia Judaica, you go to the synagogue, go up into Mulholland Drive, up to the Jewish University, and spend 3 weeks there and look up Saturn. You'll find out that 98% of all Judaism is a worship of the planet Saturn. Got to wake up and understand where this stuff comes from. Because if there is a God in heaven, if there is a divine presence in the universe that demands righteousness and justice, then you're going to have to rethink what we believe and where we're going and what the world is all about, because for the last 2,000 years we haven't done too well. Logic alone should tell you that when Jews were being marched into concentration camps, they were praying obviously to their God for protection and for help. There was no help coming. Christians have been praying to God to help this nation, to protect their family, and evil grows and multiplies each day. And the more Christians pray, the more evil the pervasiveness becomes. And the reason why is because we are not in tune with the universal God force. We're not in tune with the truth. We're in tune with what we've been told is the truth. We understand that thing that we've been told about government, that we have to pay your taxes because that's the law. You think, what law? Where is there a law that says that? Well, it's in there somewhere. No. Where is the law? Then you find out, well, it was just a lie. The whole thing was a lie. The whole thing is a sham. Well, the same thing is true in our theological thinking. The reason why I am bringing this subject up is because I feel it's important now in the year 2002, because I think that very soon we're going to experience some pretty dynamic spiritual things are going to begin to happen on the earth, because I do not believe that the divine presence in the universe that men have called God is going to allow this to go on much longer. But the way history has always shown us is that when God moves, theologically speaking, when God moves, people die. And consequently, I think that we are coming to a point where we're going to be in serious trouble, and that's why I want to help my fellow man, to become spiritually prepared for what's coming. And the only way you're going to do that is understand where things come from and begin to appreciate we've been misled again. I have tons of videos, of slides I'd like to show, but there's so many things I want to talk about too. Let me get back to the planet Saturn. Saturn was referred to, as I said, its symbol was the six-pointed star. Today we call it the Star of David. Saturn was referred to as El, E-L. El was the god Saturn in the old Phoenician Canaanite system. And consequently, anyone that promoted the worship of El is where we get the word elder. You become an elder because you were worshiping El. And when you worship El and become an elder, then how did you get to be an elder? You got elected. So therefore we have elections. Now that you have been elected to be an elder, now you are one of the elites. Why? Because now you have moved up, like in an elevator. You are now moved up in society. World. Consequently, if anything's going to happen in this country to turn it around, we're going to need a renaissance, an intellectual, spiritual renaissance. Because you can't do it with arms. Adolf Hitler rose to power the same way George Bush did. It's the simple Mickey Mouse routine that it works every time. I'm ashamed of this country, and I'm ashamed of the people who call themselves Americans who drive around with a damn silly-ass flag on their car and not even realize that's not an American flag. All you got to do is do your homework. You find out that is a United States flag. And it's not even an original United States flag, because an original United States flag has these stripes going vertical, not horizontal. But who the hell knows that? Who cares? I mean, we just put a flag on your car and drive around like a fool. It is a disgrace. Somewhere along the line, we're going to discover we've been had, if we haven't already figured it out. I want to show you how the planet Saturn, the Saturnalian brotherhood, the worship of the planet Saturn. Saturn's color was black. The black, each one of the gods and each one of the planets were associated with a different color. Green was associated with Venus, and that's why today in Islamic countries today you will see all of their flags and harlotry in Islamic world are in green. And you'll see the crescent with the star. Many people think the crescent is the crescent of the moon, but it is not. According to the actual research documents, the crescent on the Islamic flags is the crescent of the planet Venus. And the star represents Venus. It is a religion that is based on the worship of Venus, but which has incorporated the Saturnalian philosophy in it. So, like all the other religions, it is also a very eclectic religion. We hear that God's name is Yahweh. Let me tell you something about Yahweh. I mean, I've spent 42 years looking at this stuff, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm amazed at how many people don't even begin to know what these words mean. Yahweh is not the name of God. Yahweh in Hebrew is an expressive term. It's expressing something. It's describing something. It's not a formal name of God. Yahweh in Hebrew simply means, and the best way to explain what the word means is to take a garden hose and hold the end of it, turn on the water, and you feel the pressure building up. When you release the hose, it's a release of pressure. It's a release of energy. In the Hebrew, in the ancient Hebrew, the release of dynamic energy was called Yahweh. And it was always associated with sex. It's the building up of the sexual urge, and the releasing of sex in the sex act was referred to in the ancient Phoenician Canaanite system as being one with Yahweh. The explosion of divine creativity. That's why our Jewish physicists have told us the universe came into existence by a big bang. Consequently, I become very disorganized in my thinking because there's so many things I want to show you. So many things I've been wanting to tell people for years. I got to boil down 42 years into an hour or so. But suffice it to say that the planet Saturn is very important, and you need to remember that and do some research on it, and you will find that the Nazi Party was probably the most glorious Saturnalian brotherhood we've ever seen. Nazis were heavy into the Saturnalian system of philosophy, war, destruction. The ancient Phoenician Canaanites said that the women should listen to their god Saturn. They always knew Saturn had rings. So they said the women should listen to their gods, so women were to wear earrings. Men were to get married before their God, so they were to wear a wedding ring. Kings were to get crowned before their gods, so consequently they would have a round crown, the corona. The ring. Saturn is the god of this world. From that we get the dark side of the Force, Darth Vader. Remember Darth Vader with his Nazi helmet speaking through the Masonic triangle? Somebody better do their homework. This stuff is fascinating when you get into it. In the ancient Phoenician Canaanite system, when it finally bled into Europe thousands of years ago, it formed what we call the Celtic Druidic system. The Celtic Druidic system had its origins in the old Phoenician Canaanite system. That whole area we call today Israel and Lebanon, that was called Phoenicia, Cana. And consequently, that whole system of the Canaanite religion found its way into Eastern Europe and then into Northern Europe and formed the basis theologically for what came to be known as the Celtic Druidic system. The Celtic Druidic system, one of the most important symbols, and some of you have heard me say this before, one of the most important symbols in the old Celtic Druidic system was a magic wand, like Merlin the magician with his magic wand. That's Celtic Druidic. Magic wands were always made out of holly wood. Okay? And they're still working their magic on us in Hollywood. The system that we are under is the most manipulating, exploiting system that's ever been put together. But I'll tell you one thing. The Steven Spielbergs and the George Lucases and the Michael Eisners and all the guys that run the entertainment world, all of them are many things, but stupid is not one of them. These guys are Class A, top of the line intellectuals. They know the name of the tune. They know exactly how to manipulate your thinking. They have something called program music. And you go in and most people never think when they go to a movie or watch a television show. They never think about it. Who writes scripts? Scripts are written by scriptwriters. Scriptwriters scribble scripts. And consequently, the scribbling scriptwriters were called scribes. So when Jesus denounces the Pharisees and the scribes were the people who scribbled scripts. And consequently, the religious writers of the day, those who wrote all of those glorious religious writings, were all the scribes. They're being paid money by the system to write all of their silly little scribes, all of their silly little stuff that the masters wanted. Why do you think the King James Version is called the authorized version of the Bible? It's the one King James authorized. He didn't authorize you to go doing too much research on your own. You get your head cut off. Consequently, we go back to Yahweh. I mean, have you ever wondered why we call God the Father? You ever thought about that? I mean, women, some of the women's liberals were saying could be a God the Mother, you know. I don't know. But the point being is that why do we call God the Father? It's because of rain. Rain is why we call God the Father. Because in the old ancient Hindu, if you go back into the old Sanskrit writings of the ancient Hindu religion, you will find that the divine presence of God, the Most High, was referred to in their language, in the old Sanskrit language of India. God was referred to as rain, R-A-I-N, rain. And consequently, the idea was that the earth was our mother, Mother Nature, Mother Earth. And Mother Nature gets impregnated with God's, the Father's, sacred fluid that comes and falls on the earth and impregnates Mother Nature, because everything grows. And so once a year, there was a celebration of Phoenicia Cana when the spring rains would come. And consequently, the Phoenician Canaanites knew that the rains were coming and it was going to bring a whole new life to the earth. So consequently, they had a celebration of spring, and it was called the marriage feast of Cana. The marriage feast of Cana. And this is in the Bible. As I said, that there are many things in the scriptures that are hidden right in front of you. And if you don't know what they mean, you don't know where they came from, you'd be surprised when you begin to look at where these stories come from. The whole idea of the marriage feast of Cana was Mother Earth, Mother Nature asked God's Son, our risen Savior, and of course the Son is your risen Savior. As a matter of fact, if it don't come up, we're dead. So consequently, the Son was our risen Savior, and so Mother Earth asked God's Son to draw water. The water is drawn by the Son, so it can grow, it can fall on the grapes, and the grapes can be made into wine, so it changes water into wine. And this goes back to the old ancient Phoenician Canaanite, and even the Jewish rabbis will tell you that. Consequently, there are symbols and ideas and concepts in government which are put there purposely to mislead you. There are symbols and ideas in all of our systems purposely to mislead you. And I'm saying that even the theological basis for what we think we're doing has also been misled. And until such time as we get it right, we're never going to have that divine protection that the universe offers you when you're doing it right. And again, what I do is not to offend anyone, but I want to show you how these things have crept into our modern day society. Our international banking cartels, which control, finance, and organize and direct all of this corruption, wars, and bloodshed, and we're all well aware of that, but most people don't know that international banking cartels go back to the Vatican. The Vatican, as far back as the 5th, 6th, and 7th century, was the power of Europe. The Vatican dominated Europe, and Europe dominated the world. Even the Uniform Commercial Code, the international banking codes of the world, are based on Vatican canon law. I mean, that's why when you walk into a courtroom, why do you have to go to court? Does anybody ever wonder why you go to court? I mean, you play basketball on a court, and you play tennis on a court. The whole idea in a court is to put the ball back in the other guy's court. That's right. It's just a game. Back and forth, they're throwing the ball back at each other, and the judge is there wearing a black robe. Black because of the planet Saturn. Saturn was the god of banking. That's why the judge sits on the bench. Look it up. Look up the word bench. You will find the word bench is a Latin word for a bank. So the judge rules for the bank. He don't care who's going to win or lose. Somebody's going to pay. And he's going to get paid. What does he care? Okay? So consequently, the judge rules for the bank. He sits on the bench. The whole idea is you're in court to play ball back on the court. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. Why? Because the whole thing is a racket. They're using terms and symbols and emblems. And they're playing on you. You know, a lot of people think, well, these are just play on words. Don't bet on it. The justice. That's why it's a criminal justice system. Okay? The mafia runs this town. I personally know that. Los Angeles is run by the mob. If you don't think so, they got their own license tags. The mafia has its own license tag that the police department does not touch. They see a mafia license tag, they do not touch it. I'm not going to get into that. But I can tell you that the mafia and the mob runs this country. And the Catholic Church is behind the mob. Period. My mother had an uncle when I was growing up as a child. I only remember him faintly because I was very little, who worked in the Vatican, Secretary of State's office. He was not clergy, he was civilian. And I grew up in my hometown having two uncles who were federal judges. My great-grandfather was a senator from the state of Florida, a very powerful man, and he died in office because they couldn't get rid of him. Why? Because he was mobbed, and everybody knew it. My Uncle Joe Valenzino used to come over every now and then with this big cigar and sit, and my father used to tell me, don't you ever, ever ask Uncle Joe what he does for a living. Ever. You just take whatever little presents and be cool and sit down, and if you open your mouth, I'll knock your teeth out. Okay? So I understood. There was a system in operation. My mother, my beloved mother, my father, my family, all of my family, including myself, were born and raised Catholic. So I'm not talking about the Catholic people. I'm not talking about the black people. I'm not talking about the Jewish people. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about political organizations. We're talking about institutions that are financed all over the world. Huge, powerful financial empires. That's what I'm talking about, not the people. So I grew up understanding that there was a whole system in operation, and I decided at the ripe old age of 18, when I left home to come to California, I wanted to be on my own and do my own thinking. And I started out immediately collecting and reading books on Nazism, the communist movement, the philosophies, all the different occult sciences. And it became apparent to me that the entire world system is corrupt. So what we have today on the world scene, we call them world governments and United Nations with all the different governments represented. In point of fact, what we're seeing is gang wars. We got the Crips and the Bloods and the East Side Gang and the West Side and this group and that group. And today we call them nations. No, they're only gangs. They're all corrupt, money-grubbing, and so consequently, what goes around comes around. And we're seeing the complete breakdown of law and order around the world, and I believe that there is a divine retribution coming, and this is what I'm trying to do, is make people aware that do not put your faith and trust in man in whom there is no salvation. Do not look to your religious institutions for any spirituality. They don't have any. I don't care what it is, they don't have it. The very word church, the word church is an English word. From the King's English, it goes back to a word in Scottish, kirk. K-I-R-K is church in English. Kirk in Scotland goes back to a Roman goddess, Circe. Circe goes back to a Greek goddess in Greece called Circe. Circe gave birth to Roman Circe. Roman Circe gave birth to Scottish Kirk, and Scottish Kirk gave birth to the English word church. So consequently, when you go to church, just remember it goes back to Mother Circe in Greece. Circe, if you go back to the library and get some books on Greek mythology, it will tell you that her name gives birth to what we call the church today. And Mother Circe was able to hypnotize people and bring them into her home, hypnotize them, and so that they would lose their mind and become animals, and then she would feed off of them, eat them, and feed off of them. That's Greek mythology, Mother Circe. So consequently, Mother Church has done just that. She has hypnotized people, brought people into her house, and consequently lives off of them. One of the most important financial institutions in the world is the Roman Catholic Church, and all the other churches like the Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists and Christadelphians and Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to catch up with. Consequently, all you need to do is just go see Godfather 3, and it will tell you, that's a true story, Godfather 3, about the killing of the Pope, when the propaganda duet, the P2 Lodge of Freemasonry, had to get rid of the Pope, because he was a good man. That particular Pope was a good man, and he wanted to try and straighten out the church, and they figured they'd better straighten him out. So he was dead. He died on the 33rd day of his pontificate. He died on the 33rd day. I think that's interesting. And that's in the movie Godfather 3. Consequently, I don't know if you know this or not, but at the end of the Second World War, to show you another facet of the church's work, during the Second World War in 1945, actually early 45, when the German and the Nazis began to see that they were losing the war, and it became evident that the Nazis were going to lose, the powers that be in this world wanted to get the top Nazis out of Germany before the Russians or the other Allied forces came through and would kill them. And so consequently, the Vatican, along with the CIA, the American CIA and the Vatican, made a deal where the Vatican would provide for all the top Nazis their false passports, false ID, and slip them out of Europe and send them to Central America, South America, Uruguay, and Paraguay, which incidentally those two countries were founded by Jesuits. Probably some of the most powerful criminal syndicate in the world is the Jesuits. But so we have the Nazis here in America. You know, we went to the moon supposedly with good old American ingenuity, like Dr. Werner von Braun and all those other Nazi fascist murderers that came here who are making money off of this people. And I just amazed when I watch the space shuttle taking off and you see all the Americans standing out there in Florida watching the space shuttle take off and everyone's applauding. I think, what are you applauding for? You ain't going anywhere. The hell you applauding for? If they're going somewhere, you're not going, that's for sure. You can pay for it, but you ain't going. You ever thought about how much pollution, I mean poisonous, toxic pollution that pours out of the back end of a Saturn booster, how much poison is poured out of that into our atmosphere every time they shoot one of those things? Most people don't think about that. Consequently, I believe that it's a time that the idea, this time has come to look at the real foundations of our system of thinking in this world, because if you're going to call out to God, you better get it straight. Because there are too many times in the Scriptures, and I again have to re-emphasize my appreciation for the divine principles in the Scriptures. I believe that there is a profound story, especially in the New Testament. I think that the New Testament is a redemption story. But most people have no idea in the world what redemption means. Well, as a classic example, how many Christians understand what Christ means? I mean, you can't talk, you know, I hear Christians talking all the time about Antichrist, and they haven't got the faintest idea what Christ means. How many people know what the word Christ means, or where it comes from? I mean, how many Jews talk about the Holocaust and haven't got the faintest idea in the world what a Holocaust is? Oh, a Holocaust is a terrible tragedy. Oh, it's a big fire, or something like that. It's terrible something. No. That's not what a Holocaust is. A Holocaust, according to the actual research documents, means a sacrificial, ritualistic burnt offering. When Abel and Cain and Abel in the Bible offered up a sacrifice to God, the word in the Hebrew Bible is they offered up their holocaust to God. So a holocaust is a ritualistic, sacrificial, burnt offering. Get it right. Why did the Jewish leaders in this country and around the world use the term Holocaust? Very interesting. I think that they are not telling us the whole story. Consequently, as I said, how many Christians use the word Antichrist and don't even know what the word Christ means? Christ comes from Christos. Christos in Greek means oil. That's why you have Pillsbury cooking oil called Crisco. Crisco is Christo. Christo is Christ. So Jesus Christ is Jesus the oil. I mean, that's what it means. Jesus oil. Okay? You say, well, Jesus, why? Well, because Jesus was the anointed. When you always become anointed with oil. The kings in Israel were always anointed with holy oil, so they became anointed. You know what the word anointed means in Hebrew? I don't want to get into that right now. Basically, anointing comes from the word sex. You'd be surprised how much sex is entwined in religion. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. There's a huge amount of words and terms and symbols. And when we begin to see how these stories have been put together and misrepresented, again, I believe that the Bible has been misrepresented. I think that if you go back into the ancient world and begin to see where the Bible comes from, who wrote it, and you begin to read the encoded story, it becomes fascinating stuff. And when you understand that, and I do a whole lecture, sometimes it takes 4 to 5 hours for me to do it, on astrotheology. Astrotheology is the basis for all religion on the face of the earth. It's called astrotheology. Happily, most people don't know that, so nobody's offended. But most people do not realize that astrotheology forms the foundation for virtually all religions on the face of the earth. It has to do with the worship of the heavens. And if you go back into the most ancient times, and this is a subject I've always loved, is ancient theologies. If you go back into the most, consequently, when the sun would come up in the morning, that was the one thing that saved the human race, is the coming of the sun. God's sun, the light of the world. Of course the sun lights the world. And the sun doesn't belong to China or Africa or anybody else. It belongs to God. So it was God's Son, our risen Savior. And of course the sun is your Savior, because if it don't come up, we're dead. But once you understand the concepts and ideas, then you begin to question, why did Judas go out and kiss Jesus? The scripture, you know how in the scripture talks about Judas went out and kissed Jesus? First of all, many Christians think Judas went out and kissed Jesus to identify him. Logic alone would tell you that's not true. If you just think about it. I mean, in a little Mickey Mouse town, and where Jesus would have been living, in a little small, it's not Chicago, it's a little small town, and even the Romans back in Rome knew who Jesus was, so everybody knows who he is, everybody knows what he's doing. And consequently, when the scribes and Pharisees, the religious leaders, decided they'd had enough of him and wanted to arrest him, you think they're going to have to send out somebody to find him and point him out? No, everybody in town knows who he is. Well, then why did Judas go out and kiss him? And most people think Judas went out and kissed Jesus to identify. It doesn't say that. It says he went out to kiss Jesus to betray him, not identify. What do you mean, betray? That's interesting. Because even the mafia today, when they're going to kill you, they give you the kiss of death. They've kissed you off. Why? Because in the old ancient world, when a scorpion bites you, the scorpions in the Middle East have 2 stingers, one on top of the other. And when they bite you, they leave a cut in your skin that looks just like a human lips, looks just like lips. And consequently, the ancient people said that you just got the kiss of death. He just kissed you off, okay? And consequently, that's what Judas was doing, giving him the kiss of death. Why? It has to do with astrotheology. Very interesting stuff. Now, I could talk all night on this stuff because I love it, but I wanted to show you a few because I believe that seeing things are a lot more impressive than just hearing me talk. If you remember Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, First of all, when Indiana Jones is going out to look for the lost ark, we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. Where's the first place he goes to? He goes to Tibet. Now, why would you go to Tibet if you're looking for the Hebrew lost Ark of the Covenant? Well, it's because Tibet has something very, very important connected to that symbol of the Ark of the Covenant. You better go back and look at the Buddhists and the Tibetans to understand the Ark of the Covenant, period. Second, where does he go? Once he goes to Tibet, who does he find up in Tibet looking for the lost Ark if it isn't a Nazi? And consequently, where did they go from there? He goes directly to the Holy Land to look for the lost Ark of the Covenant. No, he goes to Egypt. Why Egypt? It's because Steven Spielberg has many things, but stupid ain't one of them. He goes to Egypt because the whole idea of the lost Ark is Egyptian, not Hebrew. 1,000 years before Hebrews were ever in the area called Egypt, the Egyptians had something called the Ark of the Contract. The Ark of the Contract, which I will show you, the Ark of the Contract was a box with two angels' wings, with wings over it, and it was an Egyptian symbol, and it symbolized a contract that the pharaohs had made with the gods who came down here from Sirius, from the ancient star system of Sirius. They were called, Sirius is called the dog star. And consequently, you take dog, D-O-G, and turn it around for us, it becomes God. G-O-D is dog spelled backwards. It goes back to Sirius, the dog star. It goes back to Anubis in the Egyptian. So that the Ark of the Contract became known as the Ark of the Covenant. No, it's the Ark of the Contract, and it was 1,000 years before Hebrews ever had it. Consequently, when you understand our symbolism in theology and religion, you come to find out that we have been sold a bill of goods on so much. And why do you have these institutions that the religion, philosophy, politics, all of these systems are institutions which are being financed, organized, and directed by the people who mean to put you into bonds and chains. God has created all of the animals to be free. He created everything. God who has created all things. Freedom is the one thing that you see everywhere, except for man. And consequently, the real freedom in man is up here. Consequently, the old Hiram Mann, one of the first governors of the state of California, Hiram Mann said,
Curious and important question. I'll answer it carefully, historically, and clearly, without attacking people as individuals. What follows is about systems of power, propaganda, and history, not about every person in any group. I'll break it into three parts. 1. Lies told to Black people, especially Black Americans. 2. Lies told by colonizers. 3. Lies commonly promoted within white-dominated power systems. Then I'll explain why and how these lies were spread and what they were meant to do. Number 1. Lies told to Black people, especially Black Americans. These lies were not random. They were designed to justify slavery, segregation, and exploitation, and later to maintain inequality without chains. Lie 1. You are inferior by nature. What was said? Black people were described as less intelligent, closer to animals, incapable of self-rule, pseudoscience, phrenology, eugenics, claimed this was biological. Why it was told? To morally justify slavery, forced labor, rape, family separation. If a group is naturally inferior, abusing them feels acceptable. How it was told? Churches preached it, scientists measured skulls, textbooks and newspapers repeated it. Laws treated Black people as property. Reality, modern genetics proves race has no biological hierarchy. Intelligence, creativity, and capability are evenly distributed among humans. Lie 2. Slavery civilized you. What was said? Enslaved Africans were savages who benefited from slavery. Europe saved Africa from itself. Why it was told? To erase guilt, to reframe theft and brutality as kindness, to delegitimize African civilizations. How it was told? History books ignored. Mali Empire, Songhai, Great Zimbabwe, Benin bronzes. African knowledge systems were excluded from education. Reality. Africa had advanced states, universities, metallurgy, medicine, and global trade long before European colonization. Lie 3. Your culture is broken. What was said? Black families are naturally dysfunctional. Black culture promotes crime or laziness. Why it was told. To blame black people for conditions created by slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, mass incarceration, to avoid responsibility for structural damage. How it was told. Media stereotypes, selective crime statistics without context, ignoring policy causes. Reality. When families are repeatedly targeted by law and economics, instability is produced, not inherited. Lie 4. If you work hard enough, racism will disappear. What was said? Racism is just individual attitude. Success proves racism is over. Why it was told. To silence demands for systemic change. To divide black communities, good versus bad, black people. How it was told. Highlighting exceptions while ignoring trends. Promoting bootstrap myths without equal starting conditions. Reality. Hard work matters, but systems still shape outcomes. Number 2. Lies told by colonizers. Colonizers needed ideological cover for conquest. Lie 5. We brought civilization. What was said? Colonized lands were empty, backward, or wasted. Indigenous people were incapable of governing themselves. Why it was told? To justify land theft, to legitimize empire, to exploit labor and resources. How it was told. Maps erased native borders. Indigenous knowledge was dismissed as superstition. Missionaries framed conversion as salvation. Reality, colonization destroyed functioning societies and replaced them with extractive systems. Lie 6. Violence was necessary. What was said? Repression was for order. Rebellions proved colonized people were violent. Why it was told? To normalize massacres, to hide resistance movements as criminal. How it was told? Newspapers called freedom fighters savages. Colonial archives minimized death tolls. Reality, resistance is a universal human response to oppression. Number 3, lies commonly upheld in white-dominated power systems. Again, this is about systems, not every white person. Lie 7, whiteness is neutral. What was said? White culture equals normal. Others have race, whites don't. Why it was told? To make power invisible, to present dominance as natural. How it was told? History taught from one viewpoint. Media centered white experiences as universal reality. Whiteness is a social category created for power, not a default human state. Lie 8, racism is over, or rare. What was said? Civil rights laws ended racism. Talking about race causes division. Why it was told? To freeze progress, to delegitimize complaints. How it was told? Reframing racism as past tense. Treating patterns as coincidences. Reality, systems can persist without explicit hatred. Lie 9, black anger is the problem. What was said? Protests are the issue, not injustice. Tone matters more than truth. Why it was told? To shift focus from harm to reaction, to police behavior instead of addressing causes. How it was told? Media framing. Emphasis on property damage over lost lives. Reality, anger is a rational response to long-term injustice. The deeper truth, why these lies worked. They worked because they were repeated across generations. They were backed by law, religion, and education. They benefited powerful groups economically. They divided oppressed people from each other. The most effective lie was not you are inferior, but, open quote, this is just the natural order of things, close quote. Final takeaway. These lies were constructed, not discovered. They were told to protect power, not truth. Many people today unknowingly inherit them. Unlearning them is uncomfortable but necessary. Truth doesn't require hatred. It requires historical honesty.
That's all I got for this. You will not understand the depth of the damage that these lies have created until you are in the shoes of people that were lied upon. That's just the honest truth. A lot of things that were said were wrong. A lot of narratives that were changed were never meant to be. A lot of things that were stripped off was never what it should be. These lies were just told to cover up. These lies were just told for people to just believe. And it is now more annoying that a lot of people do not even want to wake up to reality, to understand that these things, it is well. I'm just happy that we have generations that are speaking up. We have generations that understood the depth of what has literally happened. We have generations that are not ready to just keep quiet and just let things just slide. And that is why I will keep urging people, keep talking, keep making the research, keep rooting out a lot of things, keep proving these people that no matter how you are trying to dig, bury a lot of things, we can still bring them out. Africans, you were lied to. In every single part, you were lied to. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. Credit belongs to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking my videos, dropping commentaries, sharing my videos. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. Thank you so much. And for disclaimers, this is just for educational purpose, not to come here defame or ruffle on anyone's shoulder. And yeah, with that being said, with no further ado, I do like I always say in my videos, I'm going to be saying bye and I'll see you guys in my next one. For now, bye guys. I love you guys. Mwah.